Hello and welcome. My name is Biagio Mazza, Pastoral Associate at St. Sabina Parish in Belton, Missouri, and I'm here to welcome you to another Do You Know series question. Today's Do You Know question is, do you know the backdrop to the June 29th feast and solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul? On June the 29th each year, we celebrate the feast of St. Peter and Paul, and they both celebrate on the same day. As a matter of fact, as early as the year 258, their feast was being celebrated on the same day because they were both, according to tradition, they were both martyred in the city of Rome roughly around the same time. Tradition holds that both Peter and Paul were key players in the community of Jesus followers in Rome, the Christians, but we differ on the times, and especially when Peter got to Rome. A number of scholars actually place Peter in Rome as early as the 40s, middle to late 40s, and have him be the first, actually the first leader of the Christian community in Rome, and by extension, tradition also holds him to be the first pope. Whereas Paul, from what we can tell, doesn't get to Rome till the early 60s. Paul is a Jew who's also a Roman citizen. And Paul writes many letters to the communities he has visited, but one of the letters that he does write, is one of his most significant letters, is his letter to the Romans. The Roman community was a community that Paul had not been to. His hopes were to travel to Rome and to preach and be an active member in the Roman community. But he doesn't get there till after he is being arrested for inciting a riot in the city of Jerusalem. And they put him on trial, and as a Roman citizen, he can claim to be, to have a trial in front of the Roman emperor. And so what happens to him is he is shipped to Rome and is under house arrest till he's caught up along with Peter in the persecution that Nero, the Emperor Nero, in the year 64 to 68, incites in the city of Rome. It's the first local Roman persecution of the Christians. And we know that Peter and Paul, who were supposedly both leaders traditionally in Rome, were killed or martyred during that persecution. What we do know also is that Peter is a Jew, and when it comes time for his martyrdom, he is to be martyred in a crucified manner. He's to be crucified. And in the crucifixion, he requested that he not be crucified right side up, but rather upside down, because he was not worthy to be crucified in the manner of Jesus, his master. And so he was crucified upside down, and the location most people give with regards to where he was crucified was the Vatican Hill. Or certainly that became the place where he certainly was buried anyway. Paul, on the other hand, being a Roman citizen, when he's caught up in the persecution under Nero, it's very clear that Roman citizens could not be crucified. Crucifixion was not to be applied to Roman citizens. And therefore, instead of being crucified, Paul was beheaded and buried in what would eventually be a church known as St. Paul outside the walls. There's a famous, very famous, well-known tradition, most likely based on legend, that shows up and portrayed very often in many Orthodox icons, of Peter and Paul meeting and encountering one another as they are going to their respective places of martyrdom. The icon shows them both embracing with warm affection, anxious about their faith, and yet certainly at peace, and having known that they have been faithful in preaching the word and are willing to do that till the end, that they have fought the good fight, as Paul would say, and now a merited crown awaits for them in heaven. And so it's a very famous icon that really speaks of the power of the two of them encountering one another and committing themselves totally, even to the end, to the Word and being faithful to it. As I mentioned today, two very famous churches are built on the site of their possible martyrdom and actual burial. Peter, the Basilica of St. Peter on the Vatican Hill houses the bones of St. Peter, whereas the Basilica of St. Paul outside the wall houses the bones of St. Paul himself. Both of these, as we celebrate these feasts, both of these models of faith and perseverance in the midst of persecution and death become a model for us of how we are to take hope and courage from them in carrying out the mission and ministry of Jesus, both in our own lives and in the encounters that we have with others, no matter what the difficulties and no matter what the challenges. So I hope this has helped to at least explain just a bit about the backdrop of the June 29th solemnity of both St. Peter and Paul, and I hope you will return again to more Do You Know series questions to grow and learn more about our faith. Thank you very much.